are at this time. So, are you making the biggest mistake by believing everything that you're thinking? I'm going to get into that in just a minute. And before I get into that, just drop a comment below where you're watching from. And of course, hearts, thumbs up, whatever the emojis are along the bottom, if this is making sense to you and this is interesting. So one of these mistakes that happens so often, and I've done it, my clients, when they come to me, they are fully into this, is that you believe everything that you are thinking. And there's this thought that, or this belief that comes up, is that we think that, oh, you know what, when someone else says something to us, well, we can think, well, that sounds a little bit crazy and wacky. Unfortunately, though, when it comes in our minds and it goes through it comes from our own brains and our own minds, we simply believe everything that is true. And that gets you into a very different spiral, because once you think it often enough, it becomes a belief that you're going to hold on to. Now, I'm not saying, that it's not changeable. Of course, we can change this. Of course, we can create other ways of thinking. I do want to expel the myth, though, that it's simply a matter of positive thinking. Because positive thinking, yes, it's something that's definitely needed. However, it's not going to be the thing that is going to solve all of this. Because if you're positive thinking part of the time, and the other part of the time you're believing all those thoughts that may or may not be true going through your mind, the positive thinking is going to be able to weigh up against the weight of all those negative thoughts. And there's a reason for that. So before I go on, if this is making sense, if you are, let me know where you're watching from. If you're making sense, comment Y in the chat box, or no if it's not making sense, and of course drop in a question along the way so that I can answer those questions for you as we go. So your brain is leaning towards the negative. So you are naturally inclined to be more negative than you are positive. And this has everything to do with how, we have developed over time. We were based on a survival mode, right, in the prehistoric times, where anything leaf that was rattling, you had to make sure nothing was happening there, because you didn't want to get caught out by a saber-toothed tiger or anything else that could possibly kill you. And because of that, our brains have since that time constantly been wired to lean towards the negative. So negative thinking is much easier than positive thinking because it takes no effort, because that is how our brains have been wired for so long. This is why when you think about positive thinking, it's not the be all and end all, because it takes so much more effort. So you cannot think your way out of something when you haven't, because the same thinking got you into the problem. Okay, so how do you know? Because that's one of the big questions I get from my clients. Like, well, I recognize now that my thinking needs to be a little different. However, how do I know? Because there's so many thoughts going on. Which ones do I tackle? Well, the first where you can start is listen to how you feel. So if you start to feel negative, you're starting to feel, any of those negative emotions, you're feeling angry, you're feeling regret, you're feeling frustration, you're feeling sadness, whatever the negative emotion is for you, is check in with, and then go and look at finding the thought that's going on as well in your mind as this is going on. Because that thought is going to be the trigger for that feeling. So what can you do when you found that thought? Well, that thought, you can start examining that thought, right? Really look at it, write it down. This is the best tip I can give you. is write the thought down. And here's why. Your brain can let it go and you can finally see it. It becomes tangible because you can touch it, you can see it, it's on a piece of paper. So yeah, a little old school here, but write it down because that's how you get to see the thoughts that are going on in your mind. And then you're going to simply start asking yourself the questions like, is this true? Because here's the thing, the biggest liar that you have in your life is your brain. Your brain is going to be lying to you more often than it isn't. This is not meant with any bad intention. It's just because, again, we are wired for survival, so negativity will keep us safe in a sense. I put this in air quotes because safe is a relative term. We don't face the same physical dangers that we used to in prehistoric times. And so our brains are still reacting to that prehistoric way of acting. So what do you do when you're looking for those lies, for all those things that your brains are telling you? Is again, write them down and start asking yourself those questions. Is this really true? And look at them and be your own best friend by thinking, well, if someone else said this to me, would I go like, that is a very strange thing to be saying, right? So many of our thoughts, if we were to say them out loud, and you look at them when you've written them down, you would just go like, wow, that's really not true. And because most often between the second biggest mistake, put that one. The first biggest mistake is you believe everything that you're thinking. The second biggest mistake is you're not even looking at it. And when you start to look at it, you start to shine some light on it. That's when you can start making some changes in that. You can make a decision to choose to think differently, choose a different thought, and frame it in the positive. So rather than saying, I can't do that, that is whatever it is, you can frame it in the sense of, I'm learning to whatever that is. Or instead of saying, I don't know how, say things like, I will figure out how to do this. It doesn't mean that you've already figured it out. It does mean that you're opening yourself up to possibilities of what can be possible. So if you are really going for this and starting to think like, okay, well, this lie the brain is telling me, I need to recognize first it's the lie by writing it down and looking at it and examining it and asking myself questions, just simple questions like, is this true? Is it really, really true? And you'll see how many lies you're telling yourself throughout each and every day. And here's another little tip I'm going to give you as a bonus. When you are feeling good, so when you're feeling those positive emotions like, oh, I'm happy, and life is good, I'm feeling at peace, anything that just gives you a really good feeling, that is a good time to start looking at creating a just what do you want list, right? Like a bucket list almost. And think of the things that you'd want to achieve. Think of the things that you really want in your life. Because when you have that, you also get to start using that as a counterweight to all of those thoughts that are lying to you and going, does this fit? Does this thought that I'm having fit with what I want in my life? And if it doesn't, that's a really good time to start going, we're not going to be accepting that thought here anymore. We're going to change that thought around. So your biggest mistake is believing everything you're thinking. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want you to drop in the comments what was your biggest takeaway from today. And as with other days, if you want to learn more, then just comment ready below and we'll start a conversation. So if you're really ready to go, okay, I get this, my thoughts are really getting in my way, and I really want to get past all those thoughts that I'm having, let's have a conversation. It's a free conversation that we talk just about what's going on and where you're wanting to go. And then we can take it from there. I wish you a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you